And this is one. Bring it
Session. To begin with this regional policy forum, may I please invite Dr. Bessie Produce.
He talked yesterday. He's the Deputy Secretary General of the. He's also MAFF representative to the.
Morning, welcome again for this day. And just would like to share with you about the agricultural development in Cambodia. I think I will touch on the agriculture sector as general, and also the agricultural production and also export and import. Also, we will discuss about policy and other strategy, to support the agricultural development. And we will review about how the Fisheries agriculture engage in the regional market integration. I think, as you are aware, that agriculture in Cambodia is still playing an important role.
Of your export commodities. So, who manages her own consultancy firm called Nexus Agribusiness Solutions, based in Los Baños, Laguna, Philippines. And Dr. Manrili used to be SEARCA's program head for research and development. And her areas
is not a result of a research study. It's a result of years of experiences across institutions, academic, international organizations, and international NGO, government projects, dollar-funded projects. And it provides evidences in the field that will help us understand better cross-border supply chains and market integration. Why cross-border supply chains? First, enabling everyone from farmers to firms to take up opportunities that can raise income, deliver food from surplus to deficit regions, and provide diversified sources of growth. What are the opportunities in cross-border supply chains that are evident in the region? Malaysian and Singaporeans investing in Indonesia's palm oil industry. Filipinos in tuna canneries in eastern Indonesia and PNG. Singaporean group, UAF, now the biggest player in bread in the Philippines.
You can think of different countries are now coming together to export more with one another, to trade more with one another. And this market integration can be at many levels. It can be at bilateral level, where if two countries are coming together. It can be at multilateral level, such as regional grouping of ASEAN and Penh, and it can be at a global level. So when researchers studies of market integration, they usually look at the impact of market integration on trade volume. They also look at quality differentiation, by which they calculate unit value or export price. I will explain it in my presentation later on. And the fourth marker of integration is that how a regional grouping is responding to exogenous shocks. You can think of an example of how intra-ASEAN agricultural trade responded to food price crisis in 2017. The gray dark line over there, it is intra-ASEAN agricultural trade, and after 2000, it sharply increased. Along with the increase in the intra-ASEAN trade, the import share of Myanmar, Vietnam, and Cambodia, they also increased. However, that was not the case for their exports, where Cambodia's share increased marginally at the end. Myanmar export share declined and then stagnated. For Vietnam, its export share
improve the inclusiveness of environment integration in the case of NERLI of supply chains. And in the case of Manhit, you mentioned about looking at appropriate institutional arrangements.
So diversity in terms of sources of growth. At the same time, it provides opportunities for increased income and expanded areas for development.
There can be a couple of steps that, first of all, we need to see that how the agents are there in the revenue chain, so that that monitoring study that will ensure these that every share is being given.
I think I already mentioned in my last slide about diagram. Yes, how the value chain. Of course, we have to identify who's the main player and actor. It's in there. You can see of course, the producers, and you can see the farmer, cooperative, and also the private sector as well, and probably processor and other things, and also costing down. So how we bring our farmer product to the market is very important. So that's why it's just
interest in agri-food. And he was making a statement that with e-commerce, you can pretty much throw out all the old thinking on value chains, supply chains, market integration. Because he actually mentioned the fact that traditionally we talk about having the farmer through different value chains, supply chain, intermediaries, they can see in the marketplace. But apparently with e-commerce, you can shortcut everything, leapfrog nowadays. So I'm keen to hear.
Because you basically rely on reliability of your source. And that reliability is anchored in terms of how easy or how well they can trace should there be problems with those products you bought online. How can they be traced back to source, particularly in agriculture?
Some capacity building on those technology and also knowledge to the farmer as well. But of course, we have to go because we have to run after one revolution now. And the best way is probably what is done.
All the best and a quick and complete recovery. So what I'll do is we have three speakers. We have Dr. Tan Sen He, he works with Crop Life Asia. We have Mrs. Jacinta S.T. She is with the ASEAN Farmer Organization Support Program. And we have Mr. Luku. You heard from him when he moderated the session yesterday. He is a business advisor to Agriterra. What we'll do is, instead of me introducing them, I think they have the comparative advantage in knowing their own work better. So I'll request the three speakers to come and make short opening remarks. I request 5-7 minutes, not very long. We want to keep the session interactive. Where I would really urge them to work with, to tell us about their core work and the most interesting aspects or the unique aspects of their approach of working with farmers that sets them apart from other similar
international association that I represent technology providers for both seeds, biotech, and crop protection. I represent people like Bayer, Syngenta, BASF, Corteva, FMC, and Sumitomo. So with that, I was asked to talk about the role of private sector in supporting farmers. This is our core business. We are present globally in providing technology. But what will bring you to this first slide is farmers are the core of our value chain, core of the business. But in order to get this farmer to market, to where all of you appreciate food, in what you see in packaging, we spoke so much of integration. It is a journey that we all go together. The farmer didn't come like it's not a chicken or an egg. Everything's
by our leaders in 1997, and of course, because it's set up by our leaders, ASEAN member states provide contribution to ASEAN Foundation. In total is $150,000 annually. So per country, normally they support ASEAN Foundation 15,000. ASEAN Foundation also receives support from the donors, and we also collaborate with so many stakeholders. under agriculture project. We are working through AU IFAD fund.
Shortly, my name is Luco, I already worked 5 years for Agricultura. In the program it said that I'm business advisor for Vietnam, business advisor for the Asian region, but actually I'm also deputy country representative for our Vietnam office. I will tell you a little bit more about our structure later. As Agricultura, we professionalize cooperatives and farmers organizations. Agricultura is part of a member of AgriCorp, which is a network of 80.
And then we'll open it to the audience. So my first question is, all three of you have worked in a number of ASEAN countries. Dr. Tan, you can start, but if others want to pitch in, please do. Which one of these countries do you think have the most fertile ground in terms of policy and whatever other things it takes?
The average income per farmer in Amsterdam is exceeding $40,000 per farmer. And across ASEAN countries, the average cost is $300 over to $900. Malaysia being the highest. The 900 is not the true number because the palm oil industry supplements that whole number. But if you look across, there's so much potential for each of the countries to grow. Even Vietnam alone, they supply the fruit to China exceeding 76% of their fruits goes to China alone. But reversely, they only sell, in terms of value, it's only $25 million to Thailand as opposed to Vietnam selling $975 million. So there's a lot of bilateral trade issues also. But nevertheless, there's so much potential for technology to put in place. You look at Vietnam, Indonesia, they're all agricultural powerhouse. And with the correct framework, like Thailand kitchen of the world, that has been their instrument that he will probably also know. I have friends who have bell pepper cut in the morning, 24 hours, less than 24 hours later, sits in Holland. That has been going on for the past 20 years. But why Thailand is so successful? It's because infrastructure, cold chain, Thai Airways has a priority, says whatever comes from Thailand for cold chain gets priority to get shipped. Reversely, if you look at Malaysia, you have flowers in cold chain end up in Middle East, not their destination. So, government policy for FDI, infrastructure support, and the whole technology behind the scene. If you look at whether the seedling varieties and etc., that is going to be core. And the other technology will determine whether the country will be a major exporter for the country.
Do you want to answer this question? To which countries do you find more fertile ground for creating cooperatives or other forms of farmers' organization?
Go ahead, sorry. I think that...
and why?
I think that there's... I didn't mention that we also work together with the ASEAN Foundation on the cooperative roadmap, so we also did some investigation in the policy framework. So I think that there's not like one country which is like on top or something. Or maybe personally, but this is personally, I think that in the Philippines, for example, there's quite a strong cooperative movement, and that's because of historical reasons. I think it's always with cooperatives, there are all kinds of historical reasons why cooperatives are at least what they are now. So some are very regulated cooperatives, and some are already going to become farmer-led businesses. So for example, in the Philippines, we have a portfolio with around 10 to 12 cooperatives, which in my opinion are already like on a level which are higher than many other ASEAN countries. In Vietnam, there are many cooperatives, there are many initiatives, but I think that historically it's very been government driven. So what you still see in everywhere in the infrastructure, in the institutions, is a lot of administration, a lot of control for cooperatives. Well, cooperatives should be, as we say, farmer-led businesses, and nothing more than that. It should be voluntary. Farmers should not be pushed to become members of the cooperative. In the end, we believe that there's always an added value for farmers to be in a cooperative because they can aggregate products, they can integrate in the value chain because they can start collecting, they can start processing themselves, and all the profits they get will go back to the farmers again. So that's the beauty of the cooperative concept. But for me, if I talk to all people in Asian countries, they all have a different definition of cooperative. And I think that it should be a voluntary setup. Farmers should be leading, so they should be in the board. So the members should be in the board. Members should put money in the cooperative, and they should benefit directly or with lower or a good price for the product, or in getting, for example, dividend from the business cooperative. So it's already a long answer, but that's like I can't say more about other countries, but that's more or less.
We restricted your presentation because we wanted to hear long detailed answers from you, Mrs. Sinha.
We are learning from the ASEAN Learning Series in Thailand on quality management. And the government of Thailand, they responded that the government provided support for the agriculture cooperative to purchase high technology such as solar dome installation. It costs around $6,000, and the government provides subsidy to buy this equipment 60%, while the rest will be shouldered by the agriculture cooperative. And also in Thailand, we promote this kind of engagement to other government representatives and also farmers on how they can find a way on business scheme if they would like to purchase high technology with high investment. And also in Thailand, we learned that government is not only to support farmers or the agriculture cooperative in production, but they support this agriculture cooperative starting from the production till the marketing. So the value chain is all well considered by the governments. And the next thing we also noticed that, for instance, in Vietnam, the government also attract the youth participation by requesting the fresh graduate to work with agriculture cooperative. The salary will be paid by the government, while in case they are exceeding the target, they will get bonuses. And also in each part of ASEAN, they have a different kind in supporting agriculture cooperative, but so far, if we can see the increasing number of agriculture cooperative with the support from the government, Thailand is the most best learning for others.
Thank you. You wanted to supplement your answer, so I have more questions, but I guess I'll open it to audience and then come back again with my question. Dr. Brithan. So we learned that infrastructure is important.
Applicable everywhere. In India, in 1951, just after independence, we tried to promote a cooperative setup for the agricultural development. But in one of the reports that came out just after 4 or 5 years after, it said that cooperation has failed, but it must succeed. So in your opinion, what are the, or based on your experience in the field, what are the essential conditions?
I want to give some idea of the cooperative. Like you say, there are some apart from the support from government or from other, I think the cooperative itself have, for example, if in case some case in Cambodia, the member of the cooperative or even the leader of the cooperative, their knowledge is very limited. They don't know, they don't have any connection with others, or even they don't.
That actually it's quite difficult to do cooperatives in Laos because of the historic history around cooperatives. The work I know in the World Bank was that there were certain states where people were had a much more positive attitude to cooperatives and trying to make cooperatives work in other states because it works so much. You also got coming out of India this brilliant idea of the producer company, which overcomes some of the problems.
Develop a cooperative, and the business case should be central, and if it's been done with a contract-grower scheme, or it's fine. But in the end, I think that in the long term, societies benefit from strong cooperatives, as we see in the Netherlands, for example. If you have a long-term, but again, I mean, also a lot of cooperatives in the Netherlands didn't make it. So, and there are also other forms of working with farmers. So I'm not saying that it's the only form. I think only as a type of company or type of organization, I think it's a very inclusive business model. So I think in that sense, it is very worthy. It's valuable. But it doesn't say that we can solve everything by building a cooperative, because you cannot build a cooperative from nothing. I mean, it has to come from farmers themselves, right? It's not that a cooperative should just be instated somewhere and then it's going to work. No, of course not. But,
yeah, I agree. It should be inclusive agriculture where we can be a formal group that we come in, but the group has, one, the capability to produce, number two, capability to go to market significantly between a small group. It can be five farmers or it can be 100,000 farmers. So first, the governance structure can be there. It needs to be very entrepreneur driven. It then can coalesce together to be delivering the product to the market. Because you need to also differentiate. ASEAN farmers are very small. They need a certain threshold, a certain level of capability. You need to be a few, one container, two container with that correct product quality, and then getting into, even between from Myanmar to go to Thailand, it takes that logistics trade. So you need to have certain quantity to survive. So it can be direct, official or unofficial group coming together, but driven by mutual benefit for the long-term success.
Just to remind why the agricultural cooperative in ASEAN is important, and we have sectoral working group on it. The history of agricultural cooperative is for social protection for the poor or marginalized farmers. That's why a long time ago the concept of agricultural cooperative is to provide support to farmers or farmers organization so they are not being exploited or left behind. Yeah.
Jimmy? It is the function that is important, not before. However, whatever you call it, cooperative or whatever, it is fundamental that you have to organize these small partners to have a leverage in acquiring inputs, selling their products. So whether it's cooperative or not, every organization have this, they need to be organized. But you have to demand a lot of things from them because they have to function like a business entity. Now these are farmers, you're right. You demand that they should be good in finance, in accounting, in marketing. That's too much. And I have seen a lot of cooperatives. They fail because of that. They cannot, because they are too busy working in the farm. They cannot employ. And if you look at these businesses that are buying their product or selling them inputs, they have accountants, they have marketing people, they have managers. So I like the idea of Thailand that are helping now the cooperatives. And this is one idea that I've been trying.
In value chain, because they long time ago they have what they call auto, one kampung, one product, or one village, one product. This make them really specialized, specific product, and they also know that no need to force all of the region to grow similar things, because all crops can be traded across the area. This is coming from Thailand, and also one nice story, it's also coming from Adritera, but also in Indonesia. They just signed memorandum of understanding, I believe, calling from Ministry of Cooperative. If you would like to know more, it's also here. They signed to support the agriculture cooperative to build 1 billion rupiah milling enterprises. So this milling company is owned by cooperative, and all the management will be supported by Agritera, I believe the capacity building. And the one who monitor this establishment of the company is the Ministry of Cooperative.
Thank you.
People to create decent employment for other people in ASEAN or beyond. It is one of their strategic plan of action. And since we already know, it's already written there, ASEAN Foundation requests to AFA that we bring this idea of social entrepreneurship, because what it's written is to educate how to make startup and social entrepreneurship. So we bring this idea to our ASEAN Youth Forum and seek at least what is the opinion from young people, how they can be more engaged in agriculture production. So far, if only agricultural production, they are not really interested. But if it is tech savvy, for instance, can be used Instagram or link to food culinary, gastronomy, and we also link with agrotourism, they are pretty interested. So it's not on the production side, but we ask them to think beyond production. Let's say selling the agrotourism side, selling the restaurant, gastronomy, then also selling the apps. In Indonesia, there are many booming startup on apps, for instance, Igro, Tanihub, many others, and they offer, if someone interested to, let's say, purchase 500 mangoes with investment around, for instance, 10 million rupiah to be circulated to, nobody knows, but they keep the track. So this kind of activities, it's really interest young people to go more on this agricultural sector, but not really into the production side.
Agriculture, Kasesa, as full agriculture people. Apart from that, we now see there are a lot of young graduates who say, I'm from engineering, etc.
Yeah, self-help groups are also, they are not cooperatives, but they are groups of farmers, and I think they they federate into district level and even state level federations, and that brings in economies of scale and greater political clout. So do you have similar experience in your
I just add,
things I want in agriculture. So we brought them through from cultivation all the way to market, because they are graduates, they know how to do marketing, they know how to do packaging design. And then behind the scene, we have the Malaysian government, we have the Malaysian banks, we have the government in India, land, etc. So we took them through the whole place in order to promote their agriculture and production. Today, at Penh crop science and many other companies all are heavily promoting to bring agriculture into the youth in agriculture space.
Yeah, I'm very sure. I think what we try to do in our work is we always set certain levels when we work with a cooperative about youth involvement. And we try to find them amongst producers, because there are still, I mean, a lot of youngsters go, but there are still some youngsters always in the regions who, for one reason or another, cannot go, or they want to stay. And we try to capture them from the beginning when we work with cooperatives by, sometimes we set up an advisory council with youngsters, and we always try to get one or two in the board, young people on the board. So there's like, when we enter, we have like a few criteria, and then, for example, this is one. I think that's also important that we involve them from the start, because these people are the most motivated to make something out of the farmers' organization and the cooperative. So I think that's important.
well, in your
this meeting, we know that updated standard capacity building in CB project. The second one is to strengthen the food marketing system and
to create the food balance for 5 commodities: rice, maize, soybean, sugarcane, and cassava. For all ASEAN countries, they have to contribute the updating data to our database in AFSIS, and the secretariat is in Bangkok, and Ms. Hensawang is the manager of the AFSIS secretariat. And now in AFSIS secretariat,
many project, and some is about forecasting in the past, forecasting and about the statistic methodology like forecasting. And from 2016 to this year, we have the project on about food water chain information. We have a pilot survey in Indonesia, first year Indonesia, for the cassava in Phnom and rice in Sawanakhet, Vietnam. And last year we have in Vietnam, based in Son province.
But first of all, even from my presentation, you can see that the ASEAN livestock sector livestock working group, and I think the same as the other ASEAN body, still in their plan that we still fully support the smallholder on the top of the commercial farm that is growing very fast. So you can see that the working group, I think we have some sort of capacity building, extension, and other things that support to the smallholder. And for example, like when the working group are working on the marketing something like this SDS, meaning that we will lift and give the information.
In our situation, to disseminate the policies to the smallholder farmers, there is a big gap in between. But now in our country, we have the earlier, before 2010, there are more decades, 2 or 3 decades, farmers has been used to under the planned economy, and they are also producing according to the plan of the government. But currently now they can grow freely, whatever they want, and except for the limitation of land use, they cannot.
Indonesian Cooperative Alliance set the same policy, the same law. According to the Indonesian cooperative law, ASEAN countries control this society. Myanmar cooperative society, we share to the participants.